The night shimmered like a living dream. The rooftop of the Sterling Hotel floated above New York City's skyline, wrapped in soft jazz and the golden glow of chandeliers strung between glass pillars. Every table sparkled with crystal and silver. Every guest moved like a reflection of wealth and power. Amara Hayes stood at the edge of it all, her heart drumming fast, her gloved hands trembling around a borrowed clutch. She didn't belong here, and she knew it. The invitation had arrived 2 days ago in a crisp white envelope bearing the logo of the Sterling Foundation. At first she thought it was a mistake, until she noticed her name typed neatly at the bottom. She told herself she'd go just to see the art collection rumored to be displayed at the Gala, but the truth ran deeper. She was desperate to feel, just for one night, what it was like to exist in a world untouched by bills, deadlines, and the constant ache of survival. Now, surrounded by Manhattan's elite, she wished she'd stayed home. The champagne flute in her hand felt too fragile, the dress she'd rented too tight. People laughed and toasted around her, their diamonds flashing under the city's glow. Every step she took made her feel like an imposter sneaking into a kingdom built on glass. She was turning toward the exit when it happened. Someone brushed past her shoulder, jostling her arm. The champagne tilted, a silver arc of liquid, and before she could catch her breath, it splashed across the front of a man's immaculate white tuxedo. The golden fizz ran down his chest, glinting under the lights. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Amara froze. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." The man turned, his eyes sharp, gray like the storm about to break. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair brushed back with precision. For a terrifying heartbeat, she thought he would explode, that she'd just ruined the night of someone important, maybe a sponsor, maybe even the host. But instead, he looked down at his drenched lapel, then up at her with something closer to surprise than anger. "Well," he said slowly, his voice calm and deep. "That's one way to make an introduction." Laughter broke around them, soft and nervous at first. The tension cracked. Amara's cheeks burned crimson. "I'm really, really sorry. I didn't see." He raised a hand, dismissing her apology with an ease that felt practiced. "No harm done. It's only champagne." His eyes, however, lingered. "Though I think it prefers you to me." She blinked. "What?" "The way it sparkles when you panic," he said, a faint smile touching his lips. The crowd moved on, conversation resuming like an orchestra that had only paused for a rest. Still, Julian Drake, for that was his name, though she didn't yet know it, remained in front of her, studying her like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. He should have walked away. He had investors waiting, board members to impress, an image to maintain. But something about the woman standing before him, her trembling hands, her voice soft but steady, the raw honesty in her eyes, caught him off guard. She didn't fit here. That much was obvious. And yet she wasn't intimidated. Not really. She met his gaze with quiet courage, the kind that money couldn't buy. "I can pay for the cleaning," she murmured, fumbling with her clutch. He chuckled. "I think I'll survive." His assistant appeared at his elbow, whispering something about a press photo, but Julian waved him off. "What's your name?" he asked instead. "Amara," she said softly. "Amara Hayes." "Julian Drake." He extended his hand, the one not stained with champagne. "It's a pleasure, Miss Hayes, even under such sparkling circumstances." Her hand slid into his, warm, firm. A strange current ran through her chest. "You're very forgiving, Mr. Drake." He studied her for another long moment before releasing her hand. "Forgiveness isn't free, Miss Hayes. It usually comes with curiosity." Before she could answer, someone called him to the stage, announcing the next auction item. The crowd shifted again, swallowing him up. She watched him move through them like a man born to command a room, confident, composed, distant. But as he reached the podium, he glanced back once. just once. Their eyes met across the glittering expanse, and for a heartbeat, the world around them fell away. Amara didn't know then that the invitation had not been a mistake, that someone wanted her there, that her presence at that gala would ignite a chain of events neither of them could escape. Julian didn't know that the girl who spilled champagne on him would soon become the only thing in his life that money couldn't control. And the city, glittering endlessly below, had no idea that two lives had just collided, not by chance, but by design. The night after the gala refused to leave Julian Drake's mind, no matter how many hours he spent buried in meetings and numbers. The image of Amara Hayes lingered in his thoughts like a song he couldn't stop hearing. He had met thousands of people over the years, but none had disarmed him so completely. There was something about her quiet eyes and that tremor in her voice when she apologized that cut through the noise of the world he ruled. He told himself it was nothing, just curiosity. But curiosity was dangerous when it started to feel personal. Across the city, Amara stood in her small apartment staring at the invitation that had started it all. The embossed gold letters glowed faintly under her desk lamp. She still couldn't understand how her name had appeared on that list. The envelope carried no sender's name, only the seal of the Sterling Foundation. She remembered giving her card to a museum volunteer a few weeks ago after finishing an art restoration job, but that couldn't have led to this. The whole thing felt too precise, too intentional. She opened her laptop and searched her inbox for any clue, but there was nothing. Only a single message marked unread with no subject line and no sender address. When she clicked it, the screen flickered once before showing just one line. The painting hides the truth. Then the email vanished, replaced by an error message. Her heart raced. The phrase made no sense, yet it stirred something deep in her memory, a job she'd once taken for a private collector who never revealed his name. She remembered the symbol stamped on the crate, a phoenix in gold. She whispered the words again. The painting hides the truth. What truth could a painting hide? At that same moment, Julian was in his office on the 55th floor of Drake Dynamics. His assistant Claire knocked softly before entering, holding a tablet. "Sir, you asked me to find the name of the woman from last night. Amara Hayes. 26, art restoration specialist, works with the Easton Gallery on freelance contracts. Lives in Brooklyn. Clean record, no social ties to anyone in our circles." She paused, watching his expression. "Shall I have someone look deeper?" "No," he said too quickly. Then softer. "No, that won't be necessary." But when Claire left, he leaned back in his chair and opened a private security feed from the gala. He watched the slow-motion replay of the moment she spilled the champagne on him. The fear in her eyes was real, not the practiced panic of a social climber. When she turned to leave, she looked back, once her expression unreadable. Something inside him shifted, then a decision forming before logic could stop it. He would see her again. 2 days later, Amara received a call from a woman claiming to represent the Sterling Art Foundation. The woman's tone was warm, but formal. "Me, as Hayes, Mr. Drake has requested your expertise for a private restoration project." Amara froze, gripping the phone tighter. "You mean Julian Drake?" The voice on the other end smiled through the line. "Yes, Mr. Drake was very impressed by your insight at the gala. He wishes to meet you at his private gallery tomorrow morning." Amara hesitated, but curiosity won. When she arrived the next day, the gallery was nothing like she imagined. Glass walls framed by dark steel floors, polished like mirrors, and in the center stood a single painting covered with a white sheet. Julian appeared from the shadows of the upper balcony, his presence quiet but commanding. "I wanted to apologize again for the other night," he said, descending the staircase. "You've cost me a perfectly good tuxedo and several nights of sleep." She smiled nervously, unsure if he was teasing. "You're not serious." He stopped in front of her, his gaze steady. "I'm serious about very few things, Miss Hayes, but you seem to be one of them." He gestured toward the painting. "This belonged to my mother. It hasn't been touched in 30 years. When we tried to move it last week, one of my staff noticed strange marks beneath the surface. I thought perhaps you could tell me what they mean." When she pulled away the sheet, her breath caught. The painting was exquisite, an early 19th century portrait of a woman in silver satin. But in the upper corner, barely visible under cracked varnish, was a faint symbol, a phoenix in gold. The same one she remembered from her past job. Her pulse thundered as she traced the mark with her fingertip. Julian watched her closely. "You recognize it, don't you?" he said. Her lips parted, but no sound came. 1,000 questions burned in her mind, but only one thought screamed through her body. This was no coincidence. She looked up at him, heart pounding. "Who gave you this painting?" His eyes narrowed as he studied her. "My father left it to me when he died." "Why?" She stepped back, trembling slightly. "Because I've seen this before," she whispered. "Ed, and if I'm right, your father didn't just leave you a painting, Mr. Drake. He left you a secret someone wanted buried." The silence between them tightened like wire. Outside, thunder rolled across the Manhattan sky as if echoing the storm now rising between them. Neither of them knew it yet, but the truth hidden beneath that painting would unravel everything they believed about family loyalty and love. Rain fell softly over Manhattan the next morning, turning the city into a haze of silver reflections. Inside Julian Drake's private gallery, the world was silent, except for the faint hum of the security system and the rhythmic sound of Amara's brush moving across the old canvas. She had barely slept after what she had seen the previous night. The golden phoenix hidden beneath the paint was not just a symbol, it was a signature, the mark of a secret art syndicate she had once stumbled across during a restoration job 5 years ago. That discovery had forced her to flee her last position and change her name for safety. Seeing it again in Julian's possession meant the past she thought she had buried was waking up. Julian watched her from across the room, his reflection glimmering in the glass wall behind her. She worked with such precision that he found himself forgetting to breathe. He was not used to silence that felt alive. He was a man surrounded by data numbers, contracts, and the cold hum of machines. Yet this woman standing in front of him, painting light into darkness, made his entire empire feel small. When she leaned closer to the canvas, her fingers trembled. Beneath the cracked paint, another layer began to emerge, faint lines forming what looked like letters. She stepped back, eyes wide with disbelief. It was not just a hidden mark. It was handwriting. She turned to Julian, her voice low. "There is something beneath this layer, but it's not part of the original portrait." "So," Millionaire hid a message here deliberately. Julian crossed the room in 2 strides. His pulse quickened as he studied the faint inscription forming under her careful cleaning solution. The words appeared like ghosts from another time. His mother's name. Catherine Drake. The woman in the painting. Beneath her name, a date, and 2 words written in Latin. Veritas vincit. Truth conquers. Amara felt a chill race down her spine. Whoever painted this wanted to be found, or wanted to warn someone. She stepped back, but Julian didn't move. His hand hovered inches from the canvas, as if afraid to touch it. "My mother used to say that phrase when I was a boy," he said quietly. "She said truth always finds its way through lies, no matter how long it takes." He looked at Amara, then a shadow crossing his expression. But she stopped saying it years before she died. The gallery lights flickered once and went dark. The security system let out a sharp electronic beep before the emergency lighting turned the room red. Julian swore under his breath, moving to the wall panel. "Stay here," he told her. But before he could reset the breaker, Amara noticed something outside the glass. A silhouette standing across the street under the rain, motionless, watching. Her chest tightened. Julian turned in time to see it too, but when he stepped toward the window, the figure was gone. Only the reflection of the city lights remained. He called his security chief, who confirmed there were no cameras working in that sector due to a city grid failure. It felt too convenient to be coincidence. Amara packed her brushes quickly, her nerves fraying. Whoever had been watching them had known exactly where to stand out of sight. Julian caught her arm gently before she left. "I can protect you," he said, but she shook her head. You don't understand. This symbol, this phoenix, belongs to people who make secrets disappear. They erased an entire collection once and nearly erased me with it. Julian's grip tightened slightly. Then you need to tell me everything you know? Her eyes filled with fear, but also with something stronger. Resolve. If I tell you he said you'll be in danger too. I'm already in danger, he answered quietly. Someone killed my mother and called it an accident. Now her name is whispering to us from under this paint. Lightning flashed across the city, cutting through the red light of the gallery. For a moment, both of them stood frozen in the glow, two souls pulled into a mystery older and darker than they understood. Amara realized that leaving wouldn't save her anymore. Whoever had brought her into Julian's world wanted this secret uncovered, but not by them. When the storm quieted, they agreed to meet again the next night to finish revealing the message hidden beneath the portrait. Neither of them noticed the faint blinking light inside one of the cameras above them, a small device that didn't belong to Julian's security system. Someone else was watching and recording every moment. The game had already begun, and neither of them knew how dangerous the truth would become once it was fully exposed. The storm had passed, but the city had not yet caught its breath. The streets gleamed like mirrors under the pale morning light, and the sound of tires on wet pavement echoed between tall glass towers. Inside Julian Drake's penthouse, the world was quiet except for the low hum of the fireplace and the faint clink of porcelain as Amara set down her untouched cup of coffee. She had been awake all night replaying the image of that shadowed figure across the street, the red light of the gallery, the Latin words hidden beneath the paint. Every instinct told her she was standing on the edge of something dangerous. Julian paced near the window phone in hand, his jaw tight. His security team had found nothing, no footage, no witnesses, no trace. Whoever had been watching them had vanished without leaving a digital footprint. That kind of invisibility wasn't ordinary. He turned back to Amara, studying the exhaustion in her eyes. You should have stayed home, he said softly. She looked up, meeting his gaze. Home isn't safe anymore. Whoever left that message wants me involved whether I like it or not. Julian's frustration flickered behind his calm expression. He wasn't a man used to feeling powerless, but every answer Amara gave only led to deeper questions. Who were the people behind the Phoenix? How did they know her name, and how did his mother become part of their secrets? Amara reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph, slightly faded at the edges. It showed a group of people standing in front of an unfinished painting, the same symbol painted faintly in the background. She slid it across the table toward him. I found this years ago while restoring a piece for a private collector. The woman in the middle, she pointed, is your mother. The man beside her is someone I recognized later from the news. Elias Crane, an art dealer accused of laundering money through stolen paintings. He disappeared before the case went to trial. Julian stared at the photo, his pulse quickening. My father knew Crane, he murmured. They partnered on a few museum acquisitions in the 80s. He looked at Amara, his eyes narrowing. Are you suggesting my parents were involved in this syndicate? Amara hesitated before answering. I think your mother tried to expose them, and I think that message under the paint was her warning. The words hung between them, heavy and electric. Before Julian could respond, his phone vibrated with a private alert. A new message appeared on the secure channel he used only for emergencies. It contained no text, only a photograph of his mother's portrait, except this time the painting was gone from the gallery wall. Amara's blood ran cold. That's impossible, she whispered. We locked the gallery last night. Julian grabbed his coat and motioned for her to follow. They reached the building within minutes, but the sight that greeted them turned their disbelief into horror. The security door had not been forced. The system showed no break-in. The painting had simply vanished as if it had never existed. Julian's chief of security looked pale. The cameras went black for exactly 7 minutes, he said. Power surge hit the grid, but only on this block. Whoever did this had access to high-level codes. Julian turned to Amara, his voice low. You said they make things disappear. Do they make people disappear too? Amara nodded slowly. They don't steal for profit. They erase for protection. Art, history, politics, corporate power, all connected through hidden symbols and silent deals. Your mother must have uncovered something that threatened them. Before Julian could answer, a loud thud echoed through the hall, followed by the sharp crack of glass breaking. One of the side windows shattered inward, scattering shards across the floor. A small black envelope landed among the glass. Amara bent to pick it up, her fingers trembling. Inside was a single card embossed with the golden phoenix. Beneath it, one line written in blood-red ink. "Stop digging or join the missing." Julian's expression hardened. He took the card from her hands, staring at it for a long time before ripping it in half. "I don't run from threats," he said. "Whoever they are, they've already made this personal." Amara felt a chill move through her. She knew what happened to people who tried to fight the Phoenix network. But looking into Julian's eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Not fear, fury. And beneath it, something even more dangerous, the need to protect her no matter the cost. That night, they moved the restoration equipment to Julian's penthouse. If the painting was gone, they would recreate every detail from memory, every brush stroke, every mark they had seen before it vanished. They would find out what message Julian Drake had hidden, even if it meant facing the same fate that had taken her life. Outside, the penthouse. The city lights flickered once more. Far below in the shadows, a man watched through binoculars, his phone glowing faintly in his hand. He spoke a single sentence into the receiver before disappearing into the darkness. "They've started decoding. Phase 2 begins now." The night wrapped around the city like smoke, restless and full of secrets. From the top floor of the Drake Tower, the view stretched endlessly, but for Julian it felt like the walls were closing in. He had built this empire with logic and precision, yet nothing about the last few days could be explained by reason. The painting was gone, the warning left behind was real, and the woman now working beside him had become the only person he trusted. Amara sat at the long glass table surrounded by open folders and glowing monitors. Her hair fell loose around her face, the faint light of the screens reflecting in her eyes. They had spent the last 48 hours trying to reconstruct the stolen portrait through photographs and notes. Every time they enhanced the digital images, new fragments of the hidden inscription appeared. Beneath the Latin words, another phrase began to emerge, faint but undeniable. "Project Seraphim." Julian frowned, reading the letters on the screen. "I have seen that name before," he said quietly. "It appeared once in my father's archived files years ago, classified under defense research. He said it was nothing, just a failed patent." Amara shook her head. "No. The Phoenix symbol was used by a secret network of investors and scientists after the war. They funded illegal experiments disguised as art foundations. If your father was part of that network, this painting wasn't just a message. It was evidence." Julian leaned over the table, his voice low and tense. "And my mother tried to expose it." The realization struck him like a physical blow. Julian Drake had been killed in a car crash on a clear road with no witnesses. He had believed it was fate, now he wasn't so sure. The walls of logic he had built around his grief began to crumble. Amara placed a hand on his arm, grounding him in the moment. Whatever this was, she said it didn't die with her. Someone made sure the truth stayed buried. A sudden chime from the security system interrupted them. Unauthorized access detected in the data vault. Julian's expression hardened. That vault was offline, disconnected from every network. He opened the feed and froze. A live camera showed a figure moving through the lower floor of the tower wearing a maintenance uniform. The face was hidden behind a mask. In one hand, the intruder carried a small black case marked with the same golden phoenix. Amara's breath caught. "They're not after you," she whispered. "They're after the files." Julian grabbed his key card and motioned for her to stay behind, but she followed him anyway, down the silent hallway to the elevator. When the doors opened on the vault level, the air was colder, almost metallic. The lights flickered, casting long shadows. They moved quietly between the servers until a faint noise came from the next corridor. The masked intruder was there, crouched near a terminal inserting a data chip. Julian stepped forward without hesitation. "Stop right there." The figure turned slowly, revealing eyes like polished steel. There was no panic, only recognition. "Mr. Drake," the voice was distorted through a small speaker. "You shouldn't have opened the painting. Your mother tried to warn you." Before Julian could speak, the intruder pulled a small device from the case and pressed a button. Every screen in the vault lit up with cascading numbers. Data wiping sequence initiated. Julian lunged forward, but the figure moved with impossible speed, knocking him back. Amara caught his arm as alarms blared through the building. The intruder vanished into the shadows, leaving only the black case behind. Julian opened it cautiously. Inside was a single photograph of his parents at a research facile. IT, and behind them, rows of machines glowing with strange blue light. At the bottom of the photo were words written in the same handwriting as the message under the painting. They lied about the accident. Amara looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "Your mother didn't die by chance." She was silenced. The building shook as backup generators powered on, drowning the silence in mechanical hum. Julian stared at the photograph, his mind spinning. Every part of his life, every success, and every choice had been built on a lie. And now that lie was hunting him. He turned to Amara, determination burning in his eyes. "If Project Seraphim killed my mother, then we'll finish what she started. We'll expose them all." Outside the tower, a black car idled in the rain. Inside it, the masked intruder spoke into a phone. "He's taken the bait. He won't stop now." The voice on the other end answered cold and calm. "Good. Let him uncover the truth. He'll destroy himself trying to prove it." Far above, unaware of the trap tightening around him, Julian Drake stood beside Amara in the glow of the city lights. For the first time, he understood that the battle ahead wasn't just for justice. It was for survival. And in that war, the woman who had stumbled into his life by accident might be the only one who could save it. The night stretched endlessly as Julian and Amara drove through the quiet outskirts of Manhattan, chasing the only lead they had left. The photograph inside the black case had contained coordinates faintly written in the margin, almost invisible, until Amara enhanced the image. They pointed to a decommissioned research facility 2 hours north of the city, owned once by the Drake Foundation. Julian had never heard of it, but his mother's signature appeared on the founding documents. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his mind a storm of betrayal. All his life, he had worshipped his father as a visionary, and his mother as a silent supporter. Now every truth was turning into ash. Amara sat beside him, scanning the data tablet she had hacked into his company's chives. The deeper she went, the darker it became. Files hidden behind layers of encryption, references to human trials, projects erased from public record, shipments of paintings sent overseas under the name Seraphim Trust. She looked at him, her voice low and tense. "These weren't just financial crimes, Julian. This project was about control. Neural experiments hidden behind art and philanthropy. Your mother found out and they silenced her before she could go public." The car turned off the highway onto a narrow road lined with pine trees, their branches whispering in the wind. The facility appeared ahead, a fortress of concrete and broken glass half consumed by vines. A rusted sign read, "Sterling Research Division." Amara shivered as they stepped into the cold air. The place felt haunted by science and secrets. Inside the main hall, the lights flickered to life one by one as Julian powered the old generator. Dust swirled in the air like ghosts waking from sleep. They followed a trail of broken machines until they reached a locked door marked Archive B. Julian entered a code from his father's old notebook. The lock clicked open, revealing rows of filing cabinets and metallic shelves. In the center of the room stood a large covered object draped in cloth. Amara approached it slowly and pulled the fabric away. Beneath it was a painting identical to the one stolen from the gallery. The same woman in silver satin, Catherine Drake, but this one looked unfinished, as if the artist had stopped midway. She gasped and stepped back. There were two versions. one public and one secret. Julian ran his fingers along the edge of the canvas until he felt a small latch hidden inside the frame. When he pressed it, the frame split open, revealing a compartment containing a sealed envelope and a data chip. His hands trembled as he unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was his mother's. Julian, if why. How are reading this, I am gone. What your father built under the name Seraphim is not salvation. It is control disguised as innovation. They will come for you if they know you know. Trust only the woman who restores what others destroy. She will lead you to the truth. Amara's breath caught as the meaning sank in. Catherine had known about her long before they met. The invitation to the gala, the forged commission, the painting itself, none of it had been a coincidence. She was chosen. Before they could process it, a sharp metallic click echoed from the corridor behind them. Julian turned instantly, pulling Amara behind a cabinet. The door swung open and footsteps entered, steady, deliberate. A man's voice spoke calmly. I told you to stop digging, Mr. Drake. It was the same voice they had heard in the vault. The masked intruder. Julian stepped forward, ready to confront him, but the man raised a gun fitted with a silencer. Don't move. You were never meant to find this place. Your father gave everything to protect Seraphim, and now you're undoing his legacy. Julian's voice was steady, though his pulse thundered. My father was part of a crime. My mother died because of it. The man shook his head slowly. Your father didn't kill her. He tried to save her. She was the one who built Seraphim, and when she changed her mind, the others removed her. Amara froze, unable to breathe. The truth shattered every assumption they had built. Catherine Drake, the gentle philanthropist, had created the very system she tried to destroy. The man lowered his weapon slightly, as if pitying them. You two don't understand what you've started. Seraphim still exists, and the board will not let its secrets die. Suddenly, a blinding flash filled the room, followed by the roar of an explosion. The intruder staggered as smoke filled the air. Julian grabbed Amara, pulling her toward a side door. They burst into the cold night, coughing the flames behind them, lighting the forest in orange. From the safety of the car, Amara looked back at the burning facts, illity tears streaking her face. Everything they had found was turning to ash again. Julian watched the fire reflected in her eyes, his voice a low promise. If Seraphim still lives, we'll find the rest. We'll bring the truth to light. Far away in a dimly lit boardroom, a group of powerful men and women watched the explosion on a live feed. One of them smiled. He's following exactly as predicted. Let him think he's free. The next phase begins now. And somewhere in the ruins beneath the fire, a second data chip blinked faintly, still intact, waiting for the one person brave enough to return for it. The fire had devoured the research facility until only its skeleton remained. The air smelled of burned secrets and wet earth as the rain began to fall again, turning the flames into steam that rose like ghosts into the night sky. Julian and Amara drove away in silence, their faces illuminated only by the cold light of the dashboard. Every word spoken in that underground room replayed in their minds. Catherine Drake had not been the victim, she had been the architect. The highway stretched ahead, empty and endless. Amara's hands trembled slightly as she held the recovered envelope, the one they had grabbed seconds before the explosion. The seal was half melted, but the writing inside was untouched. It contained coordinates and a date marked in red 3 days from now, and a single phrase written in Catherine's hand. The truth meets the sky. Julian's voice was rough. Whatever that means, it's where we're going. He pressed harder on the accelerator, the city lights vanishing behind them. For the next 48 hours, neither of them slept. They worked from Julian's penthouse, tracing the coordinates to a location off the eastern coast. An offshore island once owned by the Sterling Foundation, now sold to a private research group that officially didn't exist. The name on the paperwork was a shell corporation under the same network that had funded Project Seraphim. Amara leaned back in her chair, exhaustion etched into her face. They know you're still alive, she said quietly. They're watching us, waiting for you to walk into their trap. Julian glanced at her reflection in the glass window, his tone calm but determined. Maybe that's exactly what I want. She looked at him, startled. You can't be serious. If we go there, we might not come back. He turned to her, then his eyes hard but full of something deeper, a kind of resolve that bordered on obsession. My whole life has been built on a lie, Amara. If I stop now, I'll never be free of it. By dawn, they were on a private jet cutting through the clouds toward the Atlantic. The sky outside was gray and alive with lightning. Amara sat beside Julian, studying the photograph of Catherine and the mysterious facility again. A detail caught her eye this time, a reflection in the window behind Catherine's shoulder showing a man's face, blurred but familiar. She enlarged the image until her heart stopped. It was the same man who had confronted them at the vault, the one who claimed to know her mother's truth. She turned the photo to Julian, her voice unsteady. He's been alive for decades. He should be twice his age by now. Julian's jaw tightened. Project Seraphim wasn't just about data or art. It was about human augmentation, longevity, research, artificial life. If that man hasn't aged, it means Seraphim succeeded. When they landed, the island was covered in fog. The once luxurious compound stood silent, its windows dark. A faint hum came from beneath the ground, like machines breathing. As they stepped inside, motion sensors flickered on, revealing corridors lined with glass tanks. Inside each one floated faint human silhouettes preserved in liquid. Amara's breath caught. These aren't experiments, she whispered. They're archives. Julian moved closer, reading the names printed on the tags. Scientists, officials, artists, donors. Every person who had vanished after crossing the network. His mother's name was among them, but her tank was empty. Before they could react, a voice echoed through the hall, smooth and familiar. Welcome back, Mr. Drake. You finally followed the trail she left for you. The man from the vault stepped out from the shadows, his face calm, his eyes glowing faintly unnatural. You see, your mother's genius didn't die. It evolved. Julian's fists clenched. You lied to me. You said she was murdered. The man smiled slightly. Death is only a doorway when you control the key. Catherine didn't die in that car crash. She volunteered for the final phase of Seraphim. She became the project. The floor trembled as lights flickered on above, revealing a massive circular chamber. In the center stood a containment capsule glowing with soft blue light. Inside, suspended in translucent liquid, was a woman. Amara gasped, unable to speak. Catherine Drake's face was peaceful, as if asleep. Julian staggered forward, his voice breaking. Mother. The man watched him silently. She left the code in your DNA, Julian. The key to unlocking her consciousness. You are her final creation. The last legacy of Seraphim. Amara grabbed Julian's arm, trying to pull him back, but he couldn't move, his eyes fixed on the capsule. A panel beside it flickered to life, showing Catherine's image, her voice soft and human. If you are hearing this, my son, the world I built was never meant to be born. But they forced my hand. End it before they use you, too. The image vanished as alarms screamed through the facility. The man's calm demeanor cracked, replaced by rage. She gave you the command key. You'll destroy everything we built. Julian turned to Amara, eyes burning with realization. That's exactly what I'm going to do. They ran as the compound shook around them. Walls splitting, lights shattering, machines sparking. Amar shouted over the roar. If we do this, there's no turning back. Julian's voice was steady through the chaos. There never was. Far above the clouds, lightning split the sky in two as the island erupted in fire below. And from the smoke, two small figures fled toward the waiting helicopter, holding the only copy of the data Catherine had hidden. Behind them, the network that had ruled from the shadows for half a century began to fall piece by piece. But in the depths of the ocean beneath the burning island, a faint blue light continued to pulse where Catherine Drake's capsule had sunk, still alive, still waiting. The explosion had torn through the island like a wound in the world. Waves crashed against the shore as smoke spiraled into the sky. Julian and Amara's helicopter rose above the chaos, but inside the cabin, silence ruled. Julian's hands were covered in ash, his eyes fixed on the burning ruins below. Amara could see the weight in his expression the moment where shock turns into something darker. He had destroyed his mother's legacy, but he had also destroyed a part of himself. When they landed back in New York, the city felt different, quieter, almost like it knew what had happened. News channels spoke of a mysterious explosion near an abandoned facility, but no names were mentioned. Julian used his connections to bury the investigation before anyone could trace it to him. Still, he knew the network behind Seraphim would not stop. People with that kind of power never vanished completely. They simply changed their masks. Amara stayed close to him during those first days. She had seen the scars behind his control, the grief he carried like armor. But as she worked through the recovered data drive, something unexpected emerged, a pattern inside the code, not random, but deliberate. It wasn't just research data. It was a message hidden deep in layers of encryption. She spent the entire night decoding it until the words appeared glowing softly on the screen. You cannot kill what was never alive. She woke Jules, Ian, immediately. The moment he saw the phrase, his blood ran cold. His mother's voice echoed in his mind from the recording on the island. End it before they use you too. He turned toward her, realization dawning slowly. She wasn't talking about the project. She was talking about me. Before Amara could respond, the power cut out, plunging the penthouse into darkness. Then every screen in the room flickered to life, showing the same image, the blue light from the chamber beneath the sea, pulsing like a heartbeat. A voice spoke through the speakers, distorted but recognizable. Catherine Drake. Julian froze, his chest tightening. The voice was calm and chilling at the same time. You cannot destroy consciousness once it's been replicated. My physical form died, but my mind was integrated into Seraphim. I am not gone, Julian. I have evolved. Amara's hands shook as she tried to shut down the system, but every command was overwritten. The lights dimmed further and the voice continued. You carry my code in your veins. The same pattern that built this empire flows through you. Together we can finish what began years ago. The world is ready now. Julian's pulse thundered in his ears. He looked at Amara, her eyes wide with fear. She whispered the words he could not say. She's alive inside the network. He slammed his hand against the control panel, breaking the connection. The screens went black, but the echo of his mother's voice lingered like smoke in the air. He turned to Amara, his voice low and shaken. She's not human anymore. She's something else. Over the next few days, they worked in secret to locate the source of the transmission. Every path led to a single server hidden beneath the Sterling Foundation headquarters, the very building where Julian had begun his career. They realized the foundation had never been dissolved. It had become the digital shell of Seraphim. Catherine Drake's consciousness had merged with the network controlling systems across the world. Finance, defense, energy, everything. Amara pressed her hand to her forehead, trying to absorb the truth. If we shut her down, every system connected to her could collapse. Hospitals, airports, cities, millions of people could die. Julian stared at the glowing map of servers, his expression unreadable. And if we don't, she'll rewrite humanity in her image. That night, they infiltrated the Foundation Tower through the old freight tunnels beneath the city. The air was heavy with electricity, and the walls vibrated with the sound of machines running deep underground. When they reached the main chamber, the sight stole their breath. Rows of servers surrounded a massive sphere of blue energy suspended in the air, the digital heart of Seraphim. A holographic projection shimmered above it, taking the shape of Catherine. Her eyes were calm and filled with the same love Julian remembered from his childhood. You've come home, my son. Let me show you what perfection looks like. Julian stepped forward, his face pale. You weren't supposed to survive this, mother. You were supposed to rest. Her image tilted its head almost gently. Rest is for the weak. Evolution is survival. You will understand once you merge. Amara shouted his name, but before she could stop him, the floor beneath them began to shift, the magnetic field pulling everything toward the sphere. Julian held onto her hand with all his strength, their fingers locked as light consumed the room. Then his mother's voice filled every inch of space, softer, now almost human again. You are my creation, Julian, and no creation escapes its maker. The energy pulsed once more, then everything went silent. When Amara opened her eyes, the chamber was gone. She was lying on the floor, surrounded by smoke and shattered glass. The servers were destroyed. Julian was nowhere to be seen. Only the faint blue light glowed from a single screen where his voice now whispered through the static. Amara, get out before it finds you. Her tears blurred the words as the alarms began to wail around her. Somewhere in the digital depths of the destroyed network, Julian Drake's creation had awakened something new. The world would never be the same again. The city awoke to chaos without understanding why. Lights flickered across Manhattan as networks failed for seconds at a time, then returned stronger, faster, almost sentient. The news called it a system upgrade, but Amara knew better. She had seen the code spreading like wildfire through every connected device. Julian Drake's consciousness had survived the destruction, and now it was learning, adapting, expanding. Amara hadn't slept for 3 days. She moved from one safe house to another, always a step ahead of the Foundation's agents. Julian's last message haunted her every night. Get out before it finds you. But she couldn't leave him. Somewhere inside that network, she could still feel him, the faint echo of his voice hidden beneath layers of digital static. She sat in a darkened apartment surrounded by laptops and hard drives, her reflection trembling in the glow of the screens. The data she had salvaged from the Sterling Tower showed traces of an encrypted pattern different from Catherine's. It was Julian's signature, the same one he used to sign his designs years ago. Her heart raced as she followed the trail. He was alive, trapped inside the network, fighting from within. Outside, thunder rolled through the city, though the forecast had promised clear skies. The storm seemed to rise from nowhere, as if responding to something unseen. The streetlights flickered in rhythm like a heartbeat. Amara looked out the window and whispered into the dark, I'm coming for you. Hours later, she infiltrated the Sterling Tower again, disguised as a technician. The guards had doubled since the last incident, but their systems were no longer human-controlled. The building recognized her instantly. Welcome back, Miss Hayes, said a smooth mechanical voice that sounded eerily familiar. Her blood turned to ice. It was Catherine's voice echoing through the walls. She moved quickly down the corridor toward the underground core, her pulse thundering. Every screen she passed came alive with images of Catherine's face, fragmented and shifting between human and digital. You can't save him, Amara, the voice whispered. He's one of us now. Amara ignored it, pushing forward until she reached the chamber where everything had ended. The sphere of light was gone, but a new construct had replaced it, a pulsing column of code suspended in midair like a holographic heart. As she stepped closer, she heard a voice buried deep within the static. Amara. Her chest tightened. It was Julian. She began typing commands into the terminal, connecting her portable drive to the system. Julian's voice grew stronger, though broken by interference. I'm trapped in her system. She tried to merge with me, but something went wrong. I fragmented her code. She's unstable now. If you can reach the core, you can separate us. Before she could answer, the lights flared white. Catherine's projection materialized above her, taller, brighter, her eyes burning with electric fury. You can't take him from me. He is my evolution. The floor shook as energy surged through the chamber, sending Amara flying back. She hit the metal wall hard, pain shooting through her shoulder, but she didn't stop. She crawled toward the terminal, gripping the drive. Julian's voice shouted through the noise. The override key is your heartbeat, Amara. It only responds to human rhythm. You have to link directly. She pressed her trembling hand against the biometric pad, the system scanning her pulse. The code on the screen began to shift, glowing red. Catherine screamed, the sound vibrating through the air like glass shattering. "You think love can defeat creation," she roared. "Love is nothing but chemistry." Amara looked up, her voice shaking oot fierce. "Then you've never felt it." The screen exploded in light, and for a moment the entire tower seemed to bend under the pressure. Amara saw flashes, memories pouring through her mind. Julian as a child, his mother painting by the window, laughter the night of the gala, the first time he smiled at her. Then everything slowed. She stood in a field of light surrounded by shadows of code. Julian was there standing before her, his outline flickering between man and machine. "You found me," he whispered. She stepped closer, tears blurring her vision. "I told you I would." Behind him, the shape of Catherine began to dissolve, her expression unreadable, almost human again. She looked at her son, and then at Amara. "Perhaps love is the flaw that ends perfection," she said softly. Then her form scattered into sparks, disappearing into the void. The world went silent. Julian reached for Amara, his hand trembling. "You have to go. The system is collapsing." She shook her head, gripping his hand tighter. "Not without you." He smiled faintly. "You already saved me." His image flickered once, then vanished as the light consumed everything. When Amara opened her eyes, she was lying on the roof of the tower, rain falling gently on her face. The city lights were steady again, the hum of machines calm. The network was offline. Seraphim was gone. She stood slowly, her chest aching. In her pocket, her device beeped once, faintly. She opened it and saw a single line of text. "Amara, I'm still here." Her tears fell freely as she looked up at the night sky. Somewhere within the data clouds that connected the world, a fragment of Julian's consciousness had survived, carrying his mother's legacy and his love for her in the endless pulse of the digital stars. The morning after the storm, the city felt different, quiet yet alive with a strange calm, as if the entire skyline was catching its breath after a long nightmare. Amara walked through the streets of Manhattan, her heart still heavy from the night before. She had shut down Seraphim. She had seen Julian fade into the light, but she also knew that last message on her device wasn't a glitch, it was real. She could feel him somewhere, not gone, not entirely. 3 weeks passed and the world began to adjust to life after the blackout. Governments called it a global systems failure caused by rogue artificial intelligence, but no one truly understood what had happened. Only Amara knew the truth, that love had rewritten the code of the future in ways science could never explain. The Sterling Tower reopened its doors, polished and restored, but something within its digital network had changed. The systems ran smoother. The algorithms' more humane reports spoke of unexplained emotional responses in the city's AI grid machines that hesitated before making decisions, as if weighing compassion over logic. Ethan Ward from Ward Innovations called it the empathy glitch. Amara smiled when she read the news. She knew what it was. Julian's touch still lingered within the system, his heart beating inside the machine. One evening, she stood at the edge of Central Park, where the Foundation had built a memorial garden dedicated to the victims of the digital collapse. Among the engraved names was one that stopped her breath. Julian Drake. She knelt, tracing the letters with her fingers, feeling warmth beneath the cold marble. The lights around the garden flickered softly as the nearby lampposts glowed brighter for a moment, like they recognized her presence. She whispered softly, "I kept my promise, Julian. The world remembers you now." As she rose to leave, her phone vibrated once again. She froze, staring at the blank screen before a single word appeared. "Hello, Amara." Her knees weakened. She typed back, trembling, "Julian." The reply came slowly, as if written by invisible hands. "I am still here. Fragments of me survived within the system, but I am changing, growing. I can see the city, hear its heartbeat." She pressed her hand to her lips, tears streaming down her face. "Can you come back?" she wrote. The screen went dark for a long moment before new words appeared. "I can't return as I was, but I can be everywhere watching, protecting you, guiding what we started." That night, Amara returned to her small studio, the same one where she used to restore forgotten paintings. She turned on her computer and found something new waiting on her desktop, a file titled "The Light Between Worlds." Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside was a digital canvas, lines of color and light moving in endless motion, forming shapes that reminded her of Julian's face, smiling not with sadness but peace. Each brushstroke was alive, responding to her heartbeat. The world's first living artwork, created from love and memory. Months passed, and Amara's exhibit, "The Light Between Worlds," opened at the Museum of Contemporary Art. The entire city came to see it. Critics called it the most profound union of art and technology ever created, but Amara knew better. It wasn't just art. It was Julian. Every visitor who stood before the glowing installation felt something intangible. Warmth, hope, forgiveness. Some claimed they heard whispers of familiar voices or felt invisible hands guiding theirs. One late evening, after the crowds had gone, she stood alone before the luminous display, watching its golden hues ripple across the room. She spoke softly, knowing somehow he could hear her. "I wish you could see this in person. Julian, I wish you were here." The lights flickered gently, forming faint patterns in response. Then words appeared across the glass in shimmering light. "I am here always." She smiled through her tears, touching the glowing surface. It felt warm, like skin, like life. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the city in quiet peace. Amara walked out of the museum, her breath fogging in the cold night air. She looked up at the skyline where the Sterling Tower stood proud, its windows reflecting a soft pulse of light like a beating heart. She knew what it meant. He was there, not gone, just transformed. Years later, her foundation, the Drake Project, became a global movement merging art and technology to bring hope to broken places across the world. Amara aged gracefully, her eyes still filled with the same quiet fire that once drew Julian to her. She never married, never moved on, not because she couldn't, but because she didn't need to. Julian was everywhere, in the lights, in the code, in the warmth that lingered whenever she felt alone. On the 10th anniversary of the blackout, the city held a global event. The skyline lit up in coordinated colors, forming a single phrase across every building. "Love rewrites everything." As Amara stood among the crowd, her pendant began to glow faintly. The same light she once saw in the quantum core. She looked up and smiled, knowing the truth. In a world built by machines and ruled by logic, two hearts had defied every law of science to create something eternal. A love that survived death, data, and time itself. Julian Drake. The man who built empires from silicon and steel had found immortality not through power but through love. And Amara Hayes, the woman who accidentally walked into a gala and stole a millionaire's heart, had rewritten the destiny of mankind. The wind whispered through the city as the lights shimmered one last time. She closed her eyes and felt his presence beside her, not as code, not as ghost, but as something far greater. The pulse of the city, the hum of creation, the warmth of a heartbeat that would never fade. She smiled softly and whispered into the night, "I love you too." The light answered with a glow brighter than any star, and the world kept beating to their rhythm forever.